Continues that way in the testimony coming forward.
So our second panel, I'd like to welcome Jennifer Clary, which is Policy Associate at the Clean Water Action, and Cindy Tuck, who is the Deputy Executive Director for Governmental Relations Associations of the California Water Agencies. And Ms. Tuck, why don't you go first?
Thank you very much. I can't guarantee uplifting, but I'll do my best. Thank you, Chair Wieckowski and members, for this opportunity to be here today. ACWA represents 430 public water agencies across the state. Together, they provide about 90% of the water that's distributed for the public, for agriculture, and for business. So we provide a statewide perspective on water. This is obvious, but if you think about it, the drinking water program is probably one of the state's most important programs. Having safe drinking water is right up there with having food and having safe food. It's about as basic as it gets. This program, I think you're all aware, there's a federal law, federal oversight, there's a state law, state regulatory role, and then the public water systems deliver the safe water on the ground, and they take that role very seriously. I'd like to talk about two things. One, the transfer, and then two, the challenges that exist currently, just some of them. So on the transfer, not to rehash everything, but back in 2013, when Assemblymember Perea had the bill to transfer the program, ACWA and about 70 other organizations in the water community opposed that proposal. And there were several concerns, but one of the concerns was that the program was generally working. If you looked at it on a population basis, the compliance rate was about 97 or 98%. The permits were being issued on time, that kind of thing. And we were concerned that the Water Board had a lot on its plate, and we had conversations about that. We all agreed that having a 97 or 98% compliance rate wasn't good enough. For safe drinking water, we need to have a 100% compliance rate. You need to have everybody in California having safe drinking water. But we thought the state could focus in on the programs at disadvantaged communities without shifting the program. Now, late in 2013, the governor came out with a signing message saying he wanted to consolidate the drinking water program and the water quality programs at the Water Board for the reasons Tom Howard articulated. And as Mr. Howard mentioned, the secretaries created an external advisory group, the Drinking Water Reorganization Task Force. That was an excellent process. Tom recognized Liz Haven, and she did a fantastic job. It was definitely a team effort at the administration, but she played a key role in that being an excellent process. For us in the work on the bill and then in that task force, we raised 10 categories of issues that we thought really needed to be dealt with to make sure the transition would work. To their credit, we felt like we were heard on those issues, not only heard but understood. They worked on the plan to respond to those issues and then legislative language to make sure those issues were addressed. So I thought, personally I was involved with that, thought it was an excellent process, and kudos to the administration and the board for that work. When the transition actually happened on July 1, it was seamless. So kudos to the board members, to Tom Howard for his leadership, Liz Haven and others, and everybody at the Department of Public Health who moved over. They had to fit with, in the Water Board culture. Kudos to all the people involved. So now, with the transfer of the program, there are, as Cindy Forbes talked about some of the issues they're working on, there are certainly challenges. And ACWA, we like to think of ourselves as the local agency partners that work with the administration and state board to solve the issues that come up. I'll just highlight a few of them. One of them, which has come up, is the lack of safe drinking water in some disadvantaged communities, in particular where there's a problem with funding the operation and maintenance costs going forward. Our board, at the end of March this year, decided to take a leadership role in this area. We want to work proactively on solutions on the ground, so we hope to be coming to the administration and the Water Board with some very constructive recommendations. That's going to be a challenging internal process at ACWA, but we are committed to doing that. I want to mention on consolidation, when the initial language came out for that proposal, it didn't have any criteria for economic feasibility, any criteria for was it technically feasible, nothing about liability protection. And those are the kind of proposals that scare the water community because they're very well intended, but they're not going to work the way they're written. And there needs to be thoughtful discussions to make them work. So that's why we always like to engage with you and your staff on, how to make these things work on the ground. So the disadvantaged community issue is one issue. A second issue is the drinking water standards. This committee heard our sponsor bill last year on Chromium-6 and clearly understood how complicated it is to implement a new standard. It's expensive, it takes time. Meeting these standards is critical for public health, but it's not, you don't flip a switch and meet a new standard. It takes a lot of work by a lot of people. Another issue is fees. Last year in the budget process, the Water Board worked on language to change the fee structure for the drinking water program. And one of the things that they did there was, they're in their rulemaking process, they're moving away from a fee for service on the large systems, and in their proposal, they're going to be increasing the fees significantly on large systems to help fund work on small systems. We understand they need to work more on the small system issues, but does it make sense to dramatically raise the fees on large systems to cover the work on other systems? So that's a policy question that's being discussed right now.
One of the things that the report touches on, the Bay Area and Southern California pay the highest fees, and the small folks pay the highest fee. And there was acknowledgement that Californians are just used to having cheap, plentiful water, that the attitude of the typical person is that I've always had lots of water, it's always been cheap, even though from 93 to 96 we've seen, I wouldn't say, a substantial increase. Do you guys have ideas about that? It's no longer, because one of the conclusions is that those days of cheap, inexpensive water are gone. And the fact that you can use as much as you can. And I think there's a movement.
Well, I think that the days that you can use as much as you can, those are gone. And in Aqua, we're a partner with the state on Save Our Water, which is a critical program. So, we view those days as gone. At the same time, the conservation programs need to be reasonable and make sense. And we're in conversations with the state about what the long-term program should be. On affordability, water is, less than a penny a gallon for tap water. You compare that with other things like milk, gas, wine, whatever, it's your cell phone bill. It's still a great value, but infrastructure is very expensive, as the committee and the legislature focused on in the 2014 water bond, very expensive, and new standards coming in can be very expensive. So we're sensitive to the affordability issue, and of course our agencies have to work with their local customers on the appropriate rate levels. Just to close, one other issue, of course, is Prop 218. When there's a new regulation and they have to, public system has to raise the rates, that they have to go through that process often. And so that can be challenging. And under Prop 218, water systems can't have lifeline rates for low-income customers that they subsidize with higher rates. So that's, that's an issue in the Constitution.
On that, it seems like we're in a catch-22 where we know that our pipes need to be replaced. We know that the infrastructure needs to be replaced. We've got testimony that the small systems don't have the wherewithal. How might the state help in setting requirements about we need to not only build the systems, but have that maintenance in there. So that's part of the water rate that people are accepting. I know that 218 is sitting out there. I'm looking at right in the face, but saying, wait a minute, it's sort of Disneyland mentality that we're not going to be taxed. We're not going to pay for everything, and we're not capturing the true cost of the maintenance and the operations that we have to do to run that. And the penny a gallon is probably it's what we're actually charging, but maybe the actual cost, because we're not putting in any money into Kitty for the maintenance and the repairs and these new implementation of standards that we know are coming up.
So, for most systems around the state, they cover the cost with their rate making. I live in Sacramento, I pay my water bill, it covers the cost of the system in Sacramento. But there are some communities where there's been permits issued and they don't have the money for the operation and maintenance going forward. It's a unsustainable situation. And I think that's what your bill is aimed at getting at, so that there aren't new permits for systems that won't be sustainable.
The part two is the permits that have already been issued. I get the idea, no more, right? And that's half of the message. But the other is that we're in Disneyland. We're thinking that we're not actually paying for the cost of the expected breakdowns and the repairs and the improvements in the safe drinking water to get from that 98% to 100%. That's a big cost.
And one thing Aqua does is we work with our member agencies to help them educate the citizens in their communities about the cost of water, and so that the citizens will be supportive when rate increases are needed. Just to close, I wanted to thank the committee for the work you did last year on our Chrome 6 bill. We thought it was a really thoughtful, collaborative process with you and your consultant, the committee working with Jennifer's colleagues and environmental working group, and the state board had a whole team working on the bill. We all worked together, ended up with a solution that's going to work on the ground and make sense. And I just suggest that on the complicated issues in the drinking water world, if we can continue that kind of collaborative process, we will have a successful program.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jennifer Clary. I'm the Water Program Manager for Clean Water Action. I want to thank you for inviting me to speak today, because I came here 3 years ago to talk about the same thing with the former chair of the committee. And I'm happy to say that the move that we were supporting 3 years ago is turning out well. Really, the big reason is that everybody's paying attention now, and not to beat a dead horse, but the drinking water program in its former agency was really a neglected agency, a neglected entity, and it really didn't get the attention it deserved, and that's why we couldn't get regulations done unless we came to the legislature. We couldn't work with staff to really figure out all the many answers to the many problems of safe drinking water. So I think that we'd all agree that almost 2 years after the transition, that it's been successful. And I know that it's been a long haul, so there's a lot of things I still want. So we're just kind of pushing a little bit. That's my job, right? But I want to commend the director, Tom Howard, Cindy Forbes, and the staff for all the steps they've taken to really address our problems and to move the program forward. And I also want to thank Aqua and the water agencies who insisted on a drinking water transition team that meets quarterly. So it's the water agencies, advocates, and staff who talk through a lot of the issues around the transition and how we might respond to it. And we've had a lot of meetings about the fee issue and what's appropriate. But I also want to thank the legislature, because you've been our partner in safe drinking water for a lot longer than the state board has. And when we have problems, we've always come to you to try to work them out. And I think the difference is now we have an agency partner as well. So I just want to acknowledge what you've done. Even in the last year, it was legislative action and the administration through the drought bill that created the Office of Sustainable Water Solutions. And they have a quarterly newsletter. It's pretty awesome. They talk all the time. And the idea with that is you integrate your funding sources and your technical assistance in a one-stop shop, and you figure out how to help people, not just with planning and design and engineering, but governance and legal entities and water rights, and try to figure everything out. Because the one thing I figured out is every time you solve one problem, there's another one. So you really need to have that integrated work. And I noticed that just last week, the state board issued its first consolidation mandate to a water system to consolidate with a small at-risk system. I I'd like them to move a little faster on regulations, so we have a hexachrome standard, but we're still waiting for 1,2,3-trichloropropane, which was an additive to fumigants decades ago that has contaminated groundwater supplies. And there's a smoking gun out there. We have a responsible party. I appreciate that they're going to get that draft standard out by this fall, and just letting you know we're keeping an eye on the clock on that. But I would say that the biggest change in the transfer has been communications and transparency. So we have the drinking water transition team. A big issue internally was that the local engineers and the counties that are local primacy agencies didn't really know what was going on in Sacramento. So they didn't toot their horn on this, but staff has instituted a monthly training call with those local primacy agency staff, who are often the newest staff in the environmental health department, to just kind of train them on what to do. And that's important because they're the ones who oversee those small systems of 200 connections or less. So that's a really critical piece. And we heard a lot before the transfer that there wasn't a lot of communications. And then you also have the small system, the Affordable Safe Drinking Water Working Group that produced the framework that Tom Howard referred to. And that hopefully, and that basically is, what do we need to do and what are some easy steps we can take? Well, there are no easy steps, but what are some steps we can take to address things? What I'd like to point out, though, is that this isn't a mythical problem or one we're going to solve and be done with. So back when we had our drinking water stakeholder group, which preceded the transfer discussion, the Department of Public Health Drinking Water Program produced a list of 183 water systems of less than 1,000 connections that couldn't meet safe drinking water standards. And that list now, they have checks behind most of the systems. There's 44 are resolved, including my aunt's trailer park, arsenic, and about 100 and something are in development or planning or technical assistance, and a few they're going to have to do enforcement. But guess what? There's another list, and that list was compiled last year, and it's got 400 systems on it. No overlap. You have the 183, and now you have 400 more. And when you can talk about 7,600 systems, I usually look at the smaller list of 3,000 community water systems, and those are the systems that serve drinking water to residences, and 700 of them take care of 95%, and 2,300 take care of these small systems, and 25% of them, of course, that also includes schools, which is another 400 or 500, and so you have a significant percentage of them not able to meet safe drinking water standards. Believe me, when they started, they could. Groundwater's great. You put a straw in the ground, you suck it up. If the water's clean, you don't even have to chlorinate it. So it's great. The problem is, what happens when the well needs replacing? What happens when the pipes need fixing? What happens when nitrate from the fields contaminates your water supply, or you find out, whoops, we had arsenic or hexachrome in the water? That's when all of a sudden your house of cards comes tumbling down. And so it would be great to figure out how we stay out of that problem in future. And there's a whole lot I could talk all day about this, but I was told I have 5 minutes. So thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I guess I'm looking at a comprehensive approach. Now that we've got safe drinking water into the State Water Resources Board, we still have locally, your storm systems usually are run by your county, and in my district, I have Alameda County Water District does my drinking water, Union Sanitary District does my wastewater, and we still have this disjointed lack of communications on how do we manage water going forward. I don't know if that's a big question, but it seems to me that at least in the safe drinking water arena, we've got everybody under one house and communicating together. Do you guys, have any suggestions on next steps and how we talk with the other elements of water management?
Get the microphone on. Just one note, I don't think we're really operating in a Disneyland situation. I think for most part, the water systems work really well. And there is communication, particularly at the local level, among the different agencies. But to the extent that Aqua can help in that regard, we're glad to work with you and provide ideas.
But go to the example, once upon a time, we want to build a school out in the middle of nowhere, and we have to set up our own water system. So we dig a well, and now it's 60 years later. There's obviously been some growth. Why in the world in California we want any school district to run their water system? I mean, I get that it started off and it was clean water and the well was good, but right now as I sit here, and I've got some school district having the responsibility of the technology and the maintenance of what's going on, why would I even? How can we justify that? You know, just as an example, I want to pick on schools, right?
Well, I think that's a great question, particularly for schools that needs focus. At the same time, I think it's important, a lot of legislators come from local governments, and that we look how the local land use planning works and work on solutions at the local level, not necessarily assume that the state in Sacramento needs to fix everything at the local level. I'm not talking about the legislature, but having a state agency. For example, should the State Water Board, how much of a role should they have in land use? And it's important to make sure they have that there's safe drinking water for everyone, but at some point they're crossing into the land use authority at the locals, and there needs to be a good conversation about how to make that work.
Yeah, I agree that toes will be stepped on, but part of it is you got a system that's built on having snowpack, having heavy snows, having big reservoirs built. In my area, in the Bay Area, it's getting our wastewater into the bay as quickly as we can, and cementing every one of our flood channels so that all the water runs out. And we built up, they talk about that great generation, or the greatest generation. They love cement, right? They got cement all over the state, but now we're in a different paradox. I mean, different information that we know, and how some systems are going to say, well, we don't want to collect our stormwater. We don't want to do these different ideas, or maybe recycle it into our groundwater and things like that. And that's an opinion, but that's not a good opinion. It's not a progressive or a problem-solving opinion. So, again, I'm trying to look at, as we go forward, how do we look at these management ideas together?
Okay. Two thoughts for the committee. One, the funding for stormwater compliance is a major issue. There's constitutional issues at play there. It's something we want to work with the legislature and our other local government partners on. And then just one other note, when you look at the drought and how California has done through a multi-year drought, the reason we've done as well as we have is because after the last droughts, the water community has seen they have to plan for the future. They have to work with their communities to invest in the future. We need all kinds of things. We need conservation, but as the legislature saw in the bond, we have to have an all-of-the-above approach where we have a comprehensive set of actions. So it's really important that the water community keep planning for the future, because that's what has saved us right now.
I want to push back a little bit around land use, and one of the biggest difficulties in integration of water is the paranoia about integrating water and land use. So water agencies do not want to get in the land use business. They wait for their local planning agency to tell them how many people they serve, and then they figure out how to do it. And local planning agencies want to be able to turn the spigot and get water and not have to worry about preserving recharge areas or having to worry about stormwater. So it's a difficult issue, and one I agree needs to be solved at the local level, but I think a gentle nudge from the state often helps drive things. For instance, the requirement for MS4 permits at the local level is really driving innovation in stormwater capture and reuse, and taking some of that cement out.
So if we can all work together on what that gentle nudge is, that would be great.
Well, I'd like to thank you for coming and testifying and discussing the state's drinking water program in California. Now, so you are excused. At this time, I'm going to open the public comment to ask members of the public who would like to comment on the testimony that we heard. Now, if you're here to testify, we have comments. If you have comments on pending legislation, including SB 1263, which will be part of this special session that we're having, Save your comments until I present the bill. Special. Please.
Mr. Chair, Justin Milan for the local environmental health directors. I want to thank you very much for holding this hearing. It's very timely. Last year, the local environmental health and some of the public health folks had some angst about the transfer of the program. Drinking water is a fundamental public health program. And there was angst about moving it from a public health agency to a regulatory agency. I want to say, at least from our experience so far, that the transition has been great. The Water Board has done an awesome job in pulling people together. The integration that you've heard about has been really fantastic. The integration of the funding itself is huge because now, as Tom said, it's a one-stop shop. These small communities that really are stressed out can now go to the Water Board and say, we need money for this. We don't have to figure out how many different pots of money there are. Water Board says, okay, we'll try and make it happen. So that is huge. As you heard, there are 180 plus systems that are out of compliance. These truly are legacy systems. These systems go back 60, 80 years, and it's not an easy fix. But I believe the Water Board has done an awesome job in actually addressing this issue, bringing in the 31 LPAs, and those are the folks we represent, fewer than 200 connections. It's tough for those local jurisdictions. As Jennifer just said, it's not an easy fix. There are lots and lots of factors here. But I believe we can work together. The Water Board is providing the services. In addition to that, we were strong supporters of human right to water. We completely and utterly believe that water has to be safe and affordable for every Californian. So we were there with the Water Board with their resolution, and we are firmly committed to that. And we're firmly committed to working with the state and all the other agencies, ACWA and others, to make this work. And I think we're on the right track. Just finally, on a more mundane note, yes, data is a bear. We have spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars at the local level over many, many years. And I think there's a pathway to getting this right. Integrating data so we don't have 17 different databases that don't talk to themselves. We spend more time with the tail wagging the dog. I think we have on a path. Just recently, we got agreement with the LPAs and the State Water Board to figure out how to transfer this data into a centralized database. So I don't mean to be too upbeat because we still got some issues out there, but I think we're on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll close the public hearing and our oversight and welcome everyone to our actual first hearing for the Senate Environmental Quality Committee. I'm going to bring the meeting to order. We do not have a quorum, so we'll continue as a subcommittee. We'll be back. All right. Wait. So today, we have 12 items that are on the agenda. We will hear bills in file order with members from the committee testifying later. We do have a special order where I'll present a bill because it's connected with the oversight. Senator McGuire's SB 951 has been removed from today's agenda, as has SB 790, item number 5 by Senator Leyva, as well as SB 1425 by that's been removed on the request of the author by Senator Galgione. We'll start today's hearing with the special order of business, which is my bill 1265 and Senator Pavley, which directly aims to address some of the statutory gaps identified earlier. So I will turn over the gavel to former Chair Jerry Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking forward to hearing SB 1263. Please proceed.